we've got some yard art issues. Good afternoon, everybody. Actually, it's kind of evening here. Been a long day. Yesterday, I didn't even get to post. I was working a deal, and it just took all day. But I think I got a good deal for my buyers. I hope, or my sellers. I hope so, and I hope the buyers are happy at the end of the day. So tonight, we're going to go over an interesting story to me. It's about It's about property, property lines and, what we accept as a society and a neighborhood. I just think it's fascinating. I'm not pro or no on this one. I just want to bring you what I read and then hopefully we can kind of come up with our own judgments there. So let's get to the article right now. It says, Barbies and Bondage art display outside Albuquerque home concerns neighbors. And I will leave a link to the description, or a link to the original source in the description. And it said, and this is out of Albuquerque, but I think the news is out of Fort Wayne. So it says, the city of Albuquerque's code enforcement and police were called to a home near the University of New Mexico after people complained about a creepy display of Barbie dolls in their neighbor's yard. The homeowner calls it art. Others called it vulgar. So they interviewed the fellow, and he says it's Barbies in Bondage, and he didn't want to give his last name. He didn't want to show his face, but he did want to show off his collection. He says, I've had a lot. I mean, this gets creepy. I've had a lot of time to look at people walking by wearing masks, and I was taking telephoto pictures of the people with masks. And then he goes on to explain his art. And then in his front yard, it says that his front yard is full of computers, TVs, and other electronics with the words lies painted on them. Signs are hanging from a tree, including one that reads New Mexico Slave State. So, some of his neighbors not all that excited about his art. It says, I really do find it inappropriate for children and for myself also. He said his family doesn't feel comfortable walking by the home because of the display. And he was quoted as saying, I mean, I love art, so any other type of art would be great, but having naked dolls with masks lying on the sidewalk is not appropriate. Then others said that they think it's great. This is something that a person can communicate the way they feel about a certain topic through an artistic medium. City code inspector checked it out, said the display doesn't violate code because it's on private property. The city added that it's a form of free speech. And then it says 3 years ago, the city received 3 different complaints regarding another art display David had made. So I have thoughts. I have questions. Would you like to live next to David? Be honest. I wouldn't live next to David. Creepy dude. So, one of the first things that I think about is this is why people want to live in an HOA. You know how I rip on HOAs all the time for doing stupid things? David's not going to be comfortable in an HOA. So there's this balance. So we have to kind of go through it. And so one of the questions I had was, is your front yard the appropriate venue for art, or does it belong in a public space? And so, what are we doing here? I mean, say I say to somebody, hey, let's go to the art museum. Hey, let's go to the art show. It's usually not, hey, let's go look at some dude's front yard where he's got naked Barbie dolls and needles or nails in their arms with painted blood. Let's go to that neighborhood. That sounds like fun. Doesn't happen. And so I'm not calling for a law against art in a yard, but I'm saying, hey, maybe this isn't the right venue. Maybe it's not. I don't know. And then I would say that another question I had would you support your neighbor if they had art in their yard? I mean, do you want David's art next to you in my subdivision? I don't. I don't want anybody's. I'll be honest. I don't particularly want anybody's art in my neighbor's yard. I don't need it. I just don't. I just like to have a front yard that's got some grass in it, maybe some plants, a tree or shrubbery, as long as it's not bothering the neighbors. That's kind of where I want to live, and I'd kind of like my neighbors to do the same thing. So I'm not going to support my neighbors when they do that. So a question that I had is, if this artist had a rural piece of property, is he still going to be putting his art up? So if no one could see it, would he still do it? And that's kind of my thing. You know, like in commercial real estate, like they'll do traffic counts. So like the idea is, if there's 1,000 cars that goes by a property, that's better than if there's like 10. You got a better chance of selling whatever you have. That's the theory. Okay. Same thing's kind of holding here. If this dude has no one to see his art at his house, he's dead in the water. So he literally has a place for frontage where he can show off his art. And so then that makes it a little more dicey to me. Is it a residential spot or is it a commercial spot? I mean, that's kind of my argument. I get free expression. But I don't understand why people are feeling the need to put this stuff all over their yard. Yesterday in my neighborhood, I saw a huge sign, "We love our grandparents," across the entire front of the lawn. What is it about wanting to show off these displays? What are we doing here? I mean, I understand, I understand flying a flag. I understand, that's kind of nice. So, like say there's a sports team. You put up a flag for the weekend or something like that. That's fine. But we're getting to this point where we're just deciding to make our front yards like a huge billboard for something, some social cause, in this case, a grandparent's birthday. I mean, if my kids put out this sign, I'd be like, take it down. Get off my lawn. Get off my lawn. So that's kind of where I'm at. I have no problem with art. I just don't see why it needs to be on your front yard. Maybe that makes me odd. I don't know. The internet's much better than I am on this stuff, so I'm looking forward to your comments. And then the other thing is how would you respond to this art display? Would you move? If you go to your neighbor and say, "Hey man, could you take it easy on this display with gore and naked dolls?" What do you think he's going to say? He's going to say, "I have a right to display my art on my property." The person is doing it to draw attention to themselves or their art. Do you think they have any care about you? And that's just it. We have these ideas. We have these rights, okay, which I'm totally fine with. But we got to do something where there's some sort of consideration when you live in a neighborhood. In my thinking, so you don't piss your neighbor off and they don't piss you off. Like some consideration. Be considerate with your neighbor. This is where you live. And then in the article says, well, this guy says, "I don't like my kids going through this area." And my thought is the kids' argument getting old? As in, you can't do that because I have kids, or I had to explain to my kids why you're a terrible person. Is there a way we could say simply, "Hey, I don't like this." Like, I don't like this. Maybe use friends instead. "Hey, my friends don't like this." I just think that using kids in your argument gets old. In a perfect world, your kids shouldn't have to deal with anything adults manage to screw up, but the world isn't perfect. And so I am kind of sick of the I had to explain to my kid this, or I had to explain to my kid that. They're exposed to all these terrible things. It's up to you as a parent to explain your perspective on things. I can remember a number of years ago, I was going through the University of Michigan Ann Arbor campus. It's a beautiful campus. And they had this art display. This was during the Iraq War, a long time ago now, I guess. They had all these, it's kind of a protest type thing. They had all these, boots on the ground, and we're all supposed to. So I'm walking through the campus, look at this beautiful place, and now I've got all this laying around. It's just, how would I explain that to my kid? I'd say, look, somebody wanted to put boots and stuff on the thing to prove a point. It wouldn't be, we need to think deeply about this subject or anything like that. So anyway, the kids, I'm getting kind of tired of the kids' argument all the time. And then I've got two more. One, does the size of the art display matter? So if this fellow puts a couple of life-size bunnies in his front yard, are the neighbors complaining? Now, in my neighborhood, yes. I don't want to see a bunch of big life-size bunnies. But if it was a small box, like a lunchbox size, I don't care at all. And so, it's just a weird thing to me, this whole situation. And then finally, like I was saying before, there's a balance. And I don't know where it is, but there's got to be a way we can all live together in peace. I mean, your neighbor, I don't know. I just don't get it. And maybe I'm wrong. I've seen all the time where somebody will explain something to me and they'll explain it in a way I can understand it. But I just don't get what the need is for you to put all this art in the front yard. And you say, it's none of my business. And I agree with that to an extent. But if I'm, as a real estate broker, if I'm trying to sell the house next door, like, let's say half of the people that go by the house are going to say, no, I'm not interested in buying it. So now you're ruining my property, my property value because of your art. Do I not, and then you say, well, you should have known that before you moved there. It's like, the guy didn't live there. So there's all these excuses. There's all these things. If we just didn't have the art in the yard, we would never have this discussion in the first place. So as someone that provides content on YouTube and commentary, I would say, well, thank you for this guy for giving me an opportunity to discuss something that I wouldn't have otherwise been able to discuss. And with that, I'm going to go. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.